I was actually around 13 when I started smoking cigarettes, and it was a group peer thing.
I've been smoking for 26 years, and I started smoking when I was 10. My mother and father were smokers, and, I was curious. That's why I started smoking.
My mom smoked, my sister smoked, my dad smoked, so I guess that's why, being in that environment, that's why I was smoking.
Well, I was around almost in my late teens and just experimenting and tried to do it. Thought I was cool, really, and never stopped since then.
Freedom with each and every trial.
You know, many of us have been smoking for a long time. We know it isn't good for us. But the truth is, it's hard to quit. Most ex-smokers say that quitting is the most difficult thing they've ever done. And for whatever reason, quitting seems to be more difficult for African Americans than it is for others. Well, if you've been thinking of quitting, then this is the program for you. Its purpose is specifically to help African Americans quit smoking. So the information is presented in terms of what works best for us and the people we care about, how we live, our values, and our wish to have a healthy community. Gaining freedom from smoking may be one of the biggest challenges you'll ever face in your life, but it is possible to quit successfully. Millions have done it, and you can too. This program will show you how. The rest is up to you. The lives of African Americans have been intertwined with the interests of the tobacco company since the first Black Africans set foot on this continent. It is a history of use and abuse that continues to this day.
The relationship between the tobacco industry and the African American community is probably one of the most complex relationships that exist in America. There are 4 stages to it. The first one is abuse. Well, that's slavery. We would not have tobacco in this country if we did not have slaves who cultivated it. The second one is they used the African American community, particularly prior to World War II. The tobacco factory was the primary source of employment for African American men and even African American women. These were segregated workplaces. They had the worst jobs, but yet it was the only industry that was hiring them. The third is that they seduced the African American community. And the primary tactic used by the industry was targeted marketing. What do I mean by targeted marketing? It's actually very simple. They target communication venues in the African American community, newspapers, magazines, community-based organizations, dance clubs. They target every aspect of the African American community, either with advertisements or with promotions.
Tobacco companies have used Black people in glitzy ads to make smoking look glamorous and cool. Over the years, tobacco companies have also contributed money to support Black music, art, sports, theater, and dance. But of course, they make much more money selling cigarettes to us than they spend on supporting our community programs. They've developed cigarette brands specifically targeted to African Americans.
The first targeted advertising campaign by the tobacco industry actually began around the 1930s, and that was with the introduction of menthol products. The first one was actually called Spuds, and then Kool cigarettes, which we all know about. After that came Salem around 1960s, and after that came Newport. What makes menthol so important is that when you look at the smoking patterns of African Americans, today 4 out of 5 African American smokers use a menthol product. So if we just look at menthol, the success of the tobacco industry in terms of its targeted marketing has been incredible. African American smokers all menthol smokers, pure and simple.
Once the door was open, addiction did the rest. Then came the fourth stage.
And after they became customers, that's when they began to die. 47,300 African Americans die every year because of tobacco-related disease.
On average, white men smoke more cigarettes per day than black men. Yet black men are more likely to develop lung cancer. Black women also smoke fewer cigarettes per day than white women, but their lung cancer rates are higher. Research doesn't yet have the complete answer as to why this is the case, but what we do know is that smoking causes lung cancer. But lung cancer isn't the only health problem linked to cigarette smoking.
The one that's most common on people's mind is lung cancer, but there are some other cancers that people can develop, like cancer of the kidneys, cervix, and some blood cancers like leukemia. Other illnesses that are common and related to cigarette smoking include hypertension, cardiovascular disease, including diseases of the heart, coronary artery disease, and peripheral vascular disease.
African American smokers are far more likely to develop all these diseases than their white counterparts, even though they smoke fewer cigarettes. In fact, tobacco kills more Black Americans than murder, car crashes, AIDS, and drug and alcohol abuse all put together. Dr. Pablo Bejarano is a pathologist at the University of Miami Medical Center. He sees the effects of smoking every day.
I have here actual specimens of individuals who died of some of the consequences of cigarette smoking or who underwent major surgical procedures to remove the lesions due to cigarette smoking. For instance, let me start by showing you, just for comparison, a lung of a young person who never smoked, who had a car accident and died, a lung with no characteristics of cigarette smoking. And this is a lung that feels very soft. It is homogeneous in color, doesn't have any black discoloration, and doesn't have any localized, any large lesions. The small vessels stick up a little bit. That's a normal feature of a lung that is not diseased, okay? In contrast, we have a 55-year-old man who smoked 2 packages of cigarettes a day for many, many years. And this lung is very abnormal in contrast to the one we just saw. This is a lung that has these specks of black discoloration. Okay, here is a nodule of black pigment. And also, there are cystic spaces in the most peripheral aspects of this lung. These are features of emphysema, and the color is due also to cigarette smoking. In addition, this lung has one of the main causes of cancer mortality in this country. This is an example of lung cancer. This lung shows a large tumor that appears gray pink and is closely associated to the bronchi. This is the airway where the tumor was arising from. And this is the area where the toxins of cigarette smoke get first, and that's why this tumor developed in that area.
But the effects of smoking show up long before you die. Smoking can lead to asthma and emphysema, coughing, respiratory congestion, and shortness of breath. Some people's lungs become so diseased that they have to breathe from an oxygen tank in order to get enough oxygen to survive.
Many of my patients who have been long-term smokers, through the years, I've noticed that they begin to complain of shortness of breath and a chronic cough, and activities that we normally take for granted, they begin to have difficulty with because of shortness of breath. Patients will tell me sometimes that they can't walk as many blocks as they used to, or they can't walk up the stairs, the second flight of steps in their home, or to get to their apartments, things that they've been able to do for many years, but suddenly they begin to struggle with. And they never attribute it to their smoking until we have a discussion about their smoking history.
I am 53 years old, and I am a 5-year survivor from breast cancer. I sustained cancer from cigarette smoking. I started smoking at the age of maybe my late 30s at the most. And I was smoking maybe a pack, maybe a week or two. I was not a heavy smoker, so you do not have to be a heavy smoker in order to get cancer. I feel wonderful now that I'm no longer smoking. If you are a smoker, please stop. If you're not a smoker, don't start. It's very bad for your health.
Smoking also causes problems during pregnancy. A baby born to a smoker can be sickly or even die.
The carbon monoxide depletes the oxygen that's available for the fetus, and the other toxic chemicals that are in smoke are toxic for the fetus as well. And that carbon monoxide exposure to the fetus comes with preterm delivery, low birth weight, and preterm delivery is associated with increased chance of disability, increased chance of disease, and increased chance of death.
And exposure to secondhand smoke, smoke that is exhaled or that comes from the end of a burning cigarette, is a danger for non-smokers, especially children.
Their immune systems are still developing. Their respiratory system in infants are still developing. Infants actually have a higher breathing rate, a higher respiratory rate, so they take in more air relative to their body weight, and therefore they take in more smoke. All of these put them at greater risk for the medical effects of secondhand smoke, and they're actually 3 times more likely to experience crib death if they are exposed to secondhand smoke.
Children who live with smokers are sick more often and miss more days of school than children who live in a smoke-free home. In fact, Black children under the age of 5 who are poor are at the greatest risk for problems associated with secondhand smoke.
Kids have more respiratory problems when they're exposed to secondhand smoke, including coughing, breathlessness, shortness of breath, wheezing, and difficulty even just playing and exercising because of the respiratory symptoms.
Because you have a lot of people that come in and say, you know, my child is suffering from asthma. They have more upper respiratory infections. They always have an ear infection. What could be causing this? And a lot of times it's your smoking habit that's causing that. Once you stop smoking, you do so much for the entire household.
Those who go outside to smoke think they're eliminating the problem of secondhand smoke.
They believe that the smoke will stay outside and then they're okay to come inside, but the smoke comes with them. The smoke is in their hair, it's in their breath, it's on their clothing, it's on their fingers, and that is enough to expose a child in the house or any person in the house to the secondhand smoke. And any exposure to secondhand smoke has increased health risk associated with it.
In many Black communities, people don't say much about secondhand smoke because they don't want to hurt the smoker's feelings. And younger African Americans often find it hard to say anything to an adult because it would seem rude or disrespectful. Because of cultural traditions like this, non-smoking African Americans have a higher exposure to secondhand smoke, which will eventually contribute to more deaths from heart and lung diseases. Smokers need to understand that the smoke they breathe out or that comes from their lit cigarette can make the people around them sick too.
Unfortunately, children don't have the ability to get out and remove themselves from a situation where there is smoke. They are not able to complain. They have no choice to be exposed to secondhand smoke when they are in that environment.
In addition to secondhand smoke, there's another issue you should know about: the dangers of menthol cigarettes.
If you look at adult African American smokers, approximately 83% of them smoke menthol cigarettes, compared to approximately 26% of adult whites who smoke menthol. But if you look at the youth, far greater numbers of African American youth smoke menthol cigarettes, as do white youth as well.
Menthol cigarettes have been the top sellers among African Americans for more than 60 years. But it hasn't always been that way.
In the 1920s and 30s, only 5% of the African American population smoked mentholated cigarettes. And because of targeted advertising for decades, it's now at 83% of African Americans who smoke mentholated products. So it's the effectiveness of advertising over those years that took the rate from as low as it was to where it is now.
But why do menthol cigarettes attract so many black smokers?
Menthol has been shown to mitigate the irritating effects of nicotine, because nicotine can be very irritating. And menthol can also reduce the harshness of tobacco. So menthol has been used by the tobacco industry to make products that are attractive to inexperienced new smokers, because it makes it easier for them to start smoking.
Although they may taste smoother, menthol cigarettes do not make smoking safer. In fact, menthol makes cigarette smoking even more hazardous to your health.
There's research showing that menthol has a direct effect on cell membranes, making them more what we call permeable, which means that tobacco has nicotine, but tobacco also has thousands of other toxins in it as well. So if that tobacco product has menthol in it, then the cells are going to have more exposure to the other toxins in the tobacco product.
The dangers of smoking do not end with menthol cigarettes. Tobacco companies have added candy and fruit flavorings to make their tobacco products taste and smell better. In 2009, under the Family Smoking Prevention and Control Act, Congress banned the addition of flavorings to cigarettes. But the act did not ban the addition of those flavorings to other tobacco products. Black & Mild's blunts and beaties are often sold in candy and fruit flavors. Don't be fooled by the mild, sweet smell and flavor of these products. They are no healthier or more natural than their unflavored or mentholated cousins. In fact, they might even be more dangerous. Did you know that every time you smoke a cigarette, that you're putting 7,000 different chemicals into your body? And 69 of these are known causes of cancer. So what chemicals do cigarettes contain? Here are just a few. How about acetone? That's fingernail polish remover. And ammonia, the main ingredient in toilet bowl cleaner. Carbon monoxide, you may as well inhale car exhaust fumes. And arsenic, the main ingredient in rat poison. Formaldehyde is there too. That's used to preserve dead bodies. And then, of course, there's nicotine, a very effective insecticide, as well as an extremely addictive drug. So do you really want to put these substances into your body? And here's another thing. Smoking is expensive and getting more so every day. Today, a pack-a-day habit can cost more than $200 a month. That's more than $2,400 a year going up in smoke.
Thank you very much.
I don't think there are many of us who couldn't think of a lot of good ways to spend $2,400.
Money is a big issue. And when you quit smoking, you're able to save dollars where you can go and get your hair done, you can go and get your nails done, you can save up for an emergency if necessary.
And in 20 years, smoking a pack a day at about an average of $5 per pack, you would have spent $36,500. When you think about that, you realize that you could have had a new house, a new car, you could send your children to college, you could take a vacation every year, all of the things that you could enjoy instead of giving your money, your hard-earned dollars to the tobacco industry.
Okay, quitting smoking makes a lot of sense. So why don't people quit? Reason number one, they're addicted to nicotine.
Nicotine reaches your brain within 10 seconds after inhaling a cigarette. And if you can imagine that there are a bunch of billions of receptors in your brain, and nicotine receptors are all over. They're a type of acetylcholine receptor in your brain. And when nicotine enters those receptors, imagine that those receptors start to dance and there's a party going on, and it creates a sensation of pleasure in your reward pathway in your brain. And then once the blood concentration of nicotine in your body, it starts to leave your brain and it starts to go down, the party stops, the music ends, and the DJ wants to get that party started again. And that's what makes people crave more cigarettes and crave nicotine to replace what's been missing so that the party can continue.
This is the same type of addiction found with drugs like cocaine, heroin, and crack.
They give you a high, they give you a buzz, and that's what people are seeking. Perhaps the greatest difference is that nicotine is legal, whereas these other drugs are not.
Physical addiction to nicotine is one reason smokers keep smoking. but habit is another.
Few smokers have done anything in their life more frequently than they have smoked, aside from breathing. Someone who's smoked for 20 years, 1 pack of cigarettes per day, in their life, they've smoked 7,300 packs of cigarettes. And that equates to 146,000 cigarettes that they've smoked. And if you average about 10 pulls on a cigarette, that would mean that they have brought their hand to mouth to smoke a cigarette 1.46 million times in their life. And this is a very strong habit, and it makes it very difficult to quit.
The third reason people have difficulty quitting is that they depend on cigarettes to help them during emotional times.
Most smokers believe that smoking will relieve their stress. Most people will cite that that's one of the main reasons that they smoke, to relieve their stress. What our research actually shows is that smoking actually causes stress, and so it kind of has the opposite effect. Most smokers report greater levels of overall stress compared to non-smokers.
Once you've learned the behavior, now you use this coping mechanism all through life. You smoke through stress, you smoke through different situations in your life. You smoke when you have good times, you smoke in social settings. Those are just some of the reasons why people continue to smoke, because now they've incorporated it into their lifestyle.
For most smokers, smoking provides a great deal of pleasure and comfort. It's an important part of our daily routine. And even though we know it isn't good for us, or those around us, it's difficult to make the decision to give it up.
I was smoking for 50 years. I started when I was 12 years old. And I winded up with throat cancer. And I'm in pretty bad shape from that cigarette smoke. I had open heart surgery and an artery block. Couldn't walk. I had a bypass surgery. And it all come from cigarette smoke. I advise you, if you smoke, quit. If you don't smoke, don't start. Please don't start, because it's no good for your health.
But there are even more reasons to quit smoking than the health benefits.
Socially, people nowadays find smoking unacceptable. At one point, it was sexy and sophisticated to smoke. That's not the case anymore. For most people, smoking is an unattractive behavior. So if you quit smoking, then you become much more socially attractive. You'll also notice that your skin looks better and is clearer. Your eyes are less irritated. Your throat is less irritated. You don't wake up in the morning with that annoying cough that smokers have. You will have less congestion in your nose, and you'll have more air and breathe better. Food will taste better. All of these things will happen relatively early on after you quit smoking.
One excuse often heard is, if I quit smoking, I'll gain weight. Now, it is true that weight gain can be an issue for some, but typically, the amount of weight gained is only 4 to 10 pounds.
Smoking is much more dangerous than gaining a few pounds. The stress on your heart would require you to gain 90 additional pounds before it was worse than smoking.
And weight gain can be controlled with a little planning.
The best ways to minimize weight gain would be to be very careful about the foods that we eat when we quit smoking, and not use food the same way we use cigarettes.
Often concerned family members and friends of a smoker would like to force that person to quit, but it just doesn't work that way.
You can't force a person to quit. It has to come from within. You have to want it. You have to be the one to say, you know what, this is my decision. Now, reasons can be, I want to quit for my spouse, I want to quit for my children, but when it's all said and done, it's up to you.
For Mary, it was her husband's concern about her smoking and what it was doing to her.
He doesn't smoke, so my smoking was a very painful thing for him. He was convinced that I was going to die in horrible, slow, painful death.
It was something that really agitated me and really annoyed me to see her smoking, because with every drag she took off the cigarette, it felt to me that she was destroying herself more and more.
What made me decide to quit is that for the past 10 years, I've secretly wanted to be a non-smoker. I've envied non-smokers. I've envied people that could sit for 3 hours somewhere, or could make a connection to people that was stronger that I couldn't make because I simply had to keep breaking off this interaction to run away.
For James, who is retired, it was the cost.
I made up my mind to stop then because the cigarettes was costing me $3.75 a pack, and at that time they went up to $4, and that helped to make up my mind to stop. And after I went into the program and they explained to me how much money I was spending in cigarettes, that encouraged me more to leave them alone.
For you, it may be these or other reasons. It may be a health concern, high blood pressure, a heart attack, or a cancer diagnosis. Or it could be something less dramatic, like difficulty catching your breath or no longer being able to do the things you like to do. Maybe you've decided to provide a better example for your children or remove them from the dangers of secondhand smoke. Maybe your minister reminded you that your body is your temple. Regardless of the reasons, a person knows when it's their time to quit.
They start to feel fed up. They start to not derive as much pleasure from smoking as they had in the past. If they were to ask themselves on a 1 to 10 scale, I always like to put things on a 1 to 10 scale, where 10 is, I couldn't be more ready to quit, I'm ready to take action to quit now, and 1 being, I have no interest in quitting ever. If you can place yourself on that scale and you're at least a 5 or better, that means it's time to make serious changes and work towards quitting.
I quit, you quit. Freedom is what we get.
So, where are you on your plans to quit? If you're ready to quit now, that's great. This section of the video will show you how to do that. For those of you who aren't quite ready yet, you'll learn some things that may help move you closer to quitting. And for those of you who have quit before but are smoking again, this section of the video is for you too. People often try quitting a number of times before they are successful.
For most people, it takes 5 to 7 attempts before they're actually successful in quitting. Of course, that's just an average. Some people are able to quit the very first time they try, and for some people, it will take more than 7 attempts. But if you've ever tried to quit smoking and you've been unsuccessful, I would say try again, to think about what caused you to relapse or go back, and use that as a learning experience. Really analyze yourself and figure out what made you go back so that you don't make that same mistake again.
The most important message is never quit trying to quit. Now we'll show you how.
I quit, you quit. We both can conquer this.
Okay, let's say you've made the decision to quit, and now you're ready to do it. What's the best way? Do you just quit cold turkey?
The people who are able to just put down their cigarette pack and walk away and never smoke again, we all know a few of those people. Those people are few and far between. Most smokers are not able to do that, or they would have done it already. So for most people, you have to be very planful about how you're going to go about this, and you have to be patient and very committed to be successful.
Quitting smoking is a process, and to be successful, there are several steps you must take to prepare. Step 1 is to set a quit date. Some people choose a day with special significance for them, their birthday, wedding anniversary, a holiday, or other special occasions. But if there isn't anything coming up, don't wait. Just choose a day and stick with it.
Choose a quit date in the next 7 days, and at the most, the next 30 days. It's important to choose a quit date that's sooner rather than later, because while you're motivated, you need to act.
Once you've set your quit date, you'll need planning and practice to prepare for that day and patience to be successful. Step 2 in your preparation is to decide how you're going to go about quitting. What methods will you use? There are several to consider. First is whether or not to use a nicotine replacement therapy. Nicotine replacement products will help you fight the physical cravings as you go through nicotine withdrawal. There are 7 types approved by the Federal Drug Administration, or the FDA. Nicotine gum, the transdermal patch, the nicotine inhaler, the nicotine lozenge, the nicotine nasal spray, and 2 medications in pill form.
One of those is called bupropion or Wellbutrin. It's also known as Zyban. And this is a smoking cessation aid that's actually an antidepressant. And it was kind of by accident that the researchers found that it worked for people who were trying to quit smoking as well. So you can try that. You have to get a prescription from your physician. And the other aid is called Chantix or varenicline, and it's designed specifically for smoking cessation, and it works on the brain to try to inhibit that pleasure pathway so that smoking is not as rewarding.
Well, that's a lot of choices. How do you know what will work best for you?
I would suggest that people talk to their doctor. Your physician can look at your medical profile, give you advice for quitting smoking, and possibly prescribe medication to help you.
Now, some people will object to using something that puts nicotine in their bodies. Aren't you quitting smoking to get rid of nicotine?
Although many African Americans are concerned and they say to me, why would I use a nicotine replacement product? Why would I wear a patch? Why would I use a gum? I'm trying to get rid of nicotine. I'm trying to get off nicotine. But these products work and they provide you with a smaller dose of nicotine than you would get if you were to smoke. And all of these aids work with relatively similar effectiveness and they double your odds of quitting.
Nowadays, smoking carries such a stigma that some people may be embarrassed to talk to their own doctors about it.
I think it's important that they realize that they should be able to speak to their physician about any health issue, and smoking is related, because there is an opportunity for their physician to be able to help them to quit smoking and to refer them to counseling sessions, group sessions, and even if necessary, prescribe medications that may help cut the cravings.
In addition to nicotine replacement therapies, there are many other methods to help you quit. As Dr. Powell mentioned, counseling is available either as an individual or in a group setting. So which would work best for you?
Part of my work is conducting smoking cessation programs for African Americans and for the community at large. And these include individual and group counseling sessions. And what I find is that African Americans seem to be more drawn to the group and have very high success rates when they complete a group program. So my suggestion would be potentially that would be the best method to try.
But not everyone will have access to a group program in their community or be interested in talking to a professional about quitting. Another method is to use self-help materials. This video is one self-help option to help you quit smoking by giving you the same type of advice you would get if you went in for counseling. But you can find books, pamphlets, and other self-help materials from your local library and from organizations like the Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, and the American Cancer Society. You can also call a quit line.
Every state has a quit line that you can call and get counseling and potentially some sort of nicotine replacement aid to help you quit smoking. And there's also a national quit line number that you can call.
The National Smoking Quit Line is 1-800-QUIT-NOW. The people there are very supportive and can help you find local resources to help you during the quitting process. For the best chance of success, you may want to use a combination of all these methods.
I recommend that you use group counseling or perhaps a self-help set of materials that you find effective, combining that with a smoking cessation aid, a medication, like a nicotine replacement therapy, or perhaps one of the pill forms of medications for quitting smoking.
Now, we've talked a bit about some of the methods you can use to help you quit, but quitting successfully involves more than simply countering the physical cravings for nicotine. It also involves changing your behavior and lifestyle.
Nicotine dependence or addiction has three components, and that is the physical, the behavioral, and the psychological. If you use a smoking cessation aid like the nicotine gum or patch or even one of the pills, this only accounts for 1/3 of the problem. In addition to using a nicotine replacement aid, I also recommend that you engage in some sort of a behavioral modification plan.
So next, you'll need to consider your lifestyle and daily routine and how you will need to change them. Step 3 is to identify all of those situations that might get in the way of your quitting.
This might include a planned get-together with friends who you know are going to be smoking, or this might include a busy work week where you know you're going to be overwhelmed and stressed. So to the extent possible, try to make a list of the barriers that you might encounter and start coming up with solutions ahead of time.
If you live with a smoker, that will make it even more difficult to reach your goal of quitting because you'll see them smoking and have easier access to cigarettes. And those of us who live in unsafe neighborhoods or are facing hard times will have more of a challenge because smoking may be the way you usually deal with these kinds of problems. But neither of these situations should be used as a reason to continue smoking. You'll just have to work extra hard to cope with them. Ask other smokers in your home to quit with you. Or if they aren't ready, ask them to smoke outside. Exercise in your home if you have to, and develop other coping strategies for urges that you can use in your home. To that list of high-risk events or situations that may present barriers to your quitting, you also need to add your smoking triggers, all those times and places in your daily routine that you usually smoke.
After a meal, when you first wake up in the morning, after you finish a task, when you are on the phone, when you're driving in your car, when you leave a building, when you see other people smoking, when you go down to the corner to talk to some friends, when you go to the convenience store, when you go to the gas station. Think about all the times when you would likely smoke, and those would be your triggers. And you want to actually get a list of those things on paper so you can see them.
And your triggers don't have to be just times and places. They can also be your emotional states.
So do you smoke when you're happy? Do you tend to smoke when you're sad, overwhelmed, stressed, depressed, angry, frustrated? For most people who smoke, they smoke in a variety of situations and in a variety of emotional states. So you want to write those things down and make a list.
Each of these high-risk situations or smoking triggers will generate urges or cravings which you will need to overcome. So you need to come up with a way to handle each one. We call all those responses coping skills or strategies.
And there are two types of coping skills that you have to learn. One is called behavioral coping strategies, and these are things that you do, actions that you take when you want to avoid a situation or just really prepare for that situation. So number one, you can always leave. If you're in a situation where people are smoking, you might just need to leave that situation. You can also do things like drinking lots of water, which is very good for your system, eating healthy snacks, no salt pretzels, grapes, carrots, strawberries. Any of these things can be behavioral coping strategies to get you through.
Another way to deal with high-risk situation and smoking triggers is to use mental coping strategy.
Mental coping strategies are things that you tell yourself when you want to stay smoke-free. Motivational statements, if you will. Things like thinking about how much better you'll be as a non-smoker. Thinking about all the money that you've saved. Thinking about what a fabulous thing you're doing for yourself and for your family and for your community. And the research suggests that it's best to combine a behavioral strategy and a mental strategy when you have an urge to smoke. That is to say, when you feel that need for a cigarette, you tell yourself something positive and then you actually do something.
Step 5, plan ahead of time which behavioral and mental coping strategies you'll use for every high-risk situation and smoking trigger on your list.
Some triggers may be you have a smoking spouse, or you smoke after a cup of coffee, or you smoke after a meal. Start to look at how you're going to deal with those things. Start to think about ways that you won't smoke after dinner. Instead, you're going to take a walk or you're going to do the dishes.
You will need to change your routine and your lifestyle. This may be a little uncomfortable at first, but the rewards of not smoking will soon outweigh any temporary inconveniences.
Avoid your smoking friends at first. Now, I'm not saying you can't have your friends, and I'm not saying that you can't have your family, but at first, quitting has to be your priority. It has to be your number one goal. And to do this, you may have to make some changes, especially at first, and changing and avoiding as much as you can that has to do with smoking.
We are a strong people. We've had to overcome many obstacles and fight hard to get what we want. And you will need this strength to be successful quitting smoking. But strength alone is not enough if it leaves you not to ask for help. Step 6 in your preparation to quit smoking is to ask for support from your friends, coworkers, family members, or your special partner.
Support and encouragement from the people in your life is really invaluable while you're quitting smoking. This is the most difficult thing you'll ever do in your life, but the most important thing you'll ever do as well. And you need to get the people around you, behind you, and supporting you.
One of the things that I recommend to the people that I counsel is to have a support system, to have a group of cheerleaders behind you. You know, in a football game, when the crowd's booing, it's not good for the team, but the cheerleaders are always there cheering them on to move them to that next down, to push them forward. So having a group of cheerleaders behind you or having a good support system is always a good thing and is always a great positive reinforcement.
It's also important to make your commitment to quit public.
Saying it out loud and committing to the quit process is a good thing because you want to tell your friends and family members so that they won't offer you a cigarette. You want to let them know, I'm not smoking come December 5th. I'm not going to smoke anymore. This also serves where they can be a sense of reinforcement for you.
Social psychology research shows us that it's important when you're setting a goal to publicly state that goal. In doing so, you will strengthen your motivation and you'll be more likely to keep your goal.
Step 7 in your preparation to quit is to practice using the coping strategies you've planned before your quit day.
Try not to smoke at nearly as much as you usually would. And then at those times when you're not smoking and you feel those cravings, start practicing the plan that you've put in place in terms of how you will manage these urges to smoke without cigarettes, how you'll deal with all of these risky situations and not smoke.
The day before your quit day, get rid of all smoking-related paraphernalia. Throw away everything that has to do with smoking. You want to get rid of your lighters, your cigarettes, your ashtrays, even those fancy ashtrays you got as a gift from your Auntie Ebony. It is important that nothing remains that reminds you of smoking.
Many of the people who I work with are very hesitant to rid themselves of all the things that go along with smoking, like their lighters and their ashtrays. And they're very good at coming up with reasons, and I would call them excuses, for why they need to hold on to these things. Many of them say to me, well, I'm not gonna throw away my lighter because it was given to me as a gift. I will just box it up and put it in the top of my closet. The problem with that is that you know how to find it if you need it. And the same thing with the lighter and your cigarette pack.
Search your purse, your pants pockets, under the cushions of your couch, and make sure that you've gotten rid of all of your cigarettes. Otherwise, when you have that urge to smoke, it will be too easy to find a cigarette and light up. Finally, your quit day arrives. Now it's time to put your quit smoking plan into action. First thing in the morning, begin your nicotine replacement therapy if you've chosen that method. Put on your patch, chew a piece of your nicotine gum, or take your medication.
It's helping you take the edge off of the nicotine withdrawal symptoms, but it doesn't solve the other problems that go along with this addiction, such as the psychological conditioning that has occurred over time, and it doesn't stop your habit, and that's what you need to learn how to break.
So you'll need to use your coping strategies throughout the day. If you decided not to use a nicotine replacement product, suck on some mints or sugar-free candy. Say a prayer. Remind yourself that from this day forward, you are a non-smoker. You might also carry some healthy snacks to work with you, like grapes or carrots. Drinking water will also help.
I would suggest you carry a bottle of water with you all day and make sure that you're drinking 8 to 10 glasses of water all day. Remind yourself that you're now a non-smoker and that smoking is not among your list of options for that day. And at the end of the day, make sure you reward yourself for a job well done.
Positive reinforcement is key to your success in the quitting process.
I would suggest that you reward yourself every day that you are successful. I don't mean spending a lot of money or spending any money at all, but you want to engage in something that you find pleasurable as a small reward for what you've done.
Take time to call a friend who's been on your mind. Spend time with your grandkids. Since you're saving money every day you don't smoke, at the end of the week, take yourself out to dinner. The positive benefits from quitting smoking happen almost immediately.
The first benefits happen as soon as 20 minutes after your last cigarette. And of course, the longer you're able to go and more years you're able to get under your belt, you can undo some of the damage that has been caused to your lungs, your arteries, and your heart. And you can extend your life expectancy by about 7 years.
During the first 2 weeks after quitting, the symptoms of nicotine withdrawal are the strongest. Engaging in moderate exercise will help you fight the urges to smoke, and it's good for your health.
Exercise is very important as a way to handle nicotine withdrawal. It helps to flush your system out. It helps to fight the urge for a cigarette. So you might go for a walk, and even if you have to walk around your home 10 times.
When you quit smoking, you can't just stay sedentary, just can't sit around. You're gonna have to get up and have some physical activity. You're gonna have to watch what you eat, because now that you've quit smoking, food starts to taste better.
It's not always going to be easy to walk away from the urges and temptations, but keep reminding yourself of all the positive aspects of not smoking.
Notice how much energy you seem to have, how much better your food tastes, how much you can smell, and how healthy you feel. And take a few deep breaths and just get the sensation of air and life. And certainly think about all the great things you're doing and all the money that you're saving.
Everyone who quits smoking gets urges to smoke. So how can you get through those cravings without yielding to the temptation? You might even believe that because you only smoke a few cigarettes per day, quitting smoking will be easy. But even buying a few Lucy's at the store down the street or from a neighbor down the block will prolong nicotine withdrawal and keep those urges coming. First, be aware that most urges only last between 30 seconds to a minute. Even the worst ones are usually over in 5 to 7 minutes. Here are some coping skills you can use to help you fight those urges at any time and any place.
You can utilize the 4 Ds to help you with the cravings, and those 4 Ds are deep breathing, distracting yourself, delaying the urge, and drinking lots of water. Taking a deep breath to relieve that stress that's coming from the urge. Drinking lots of water, because then you have the hand-to-mouth thing that's occurring, and you are also flushing out the toxins out of your body. Delaying the urge, not giving into it. Distracting yourself, going on to something else instead of giving the cigarette or wanting a cigarette that time.
And finally, to be successful, you'll always need to make quitting your #1 goal.
There's nothing more important that you can do for your health and for your life than quitting smoking. So you have to make it your priority, even at the expense of some other things. And you have to stay very committed and focused on reaching this goal.
Unfortunately, despite our best efforts and intention, many of us give in to the temptation to smoke. But surely just one cigarette won't hurt. Or will it?
The research shows us that people who have one cigarette after quitting have a 90% relapse rate. So this means 9 out of 10 people are unsuccessful when they do that.
Okay, so you had one cigarette. Maybe you even smoked a whole pack. Don't let it get you down. You can still succeed.
Some people become discouraged, they have a slip, they have a lapse, it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. But then begin to incorporate those reasons why you wanted to quit in the first place. It could be a health reason, it could be your children, it could be better health, more money.
You don't say, I will wait to quit again next month, I'll wait to quit again next year. You want to immediately return to quitting and recognize that it's not the end of the world.
Sometimes, for whatever reason, you simply cannot go back to quitting right away.
Remember, if you've quit before, you can quit again. This time you have more knowledge under your belt, and you can use that past experience to help you in the future. But definitely do not feel bad if you've tried to quit before and been unsuccessful. You never quit quitting. Mary has tried quitting 10 times before, but this time she is ready for success.
This time I confronted emotional issues to ensure that I quit smoking successfully. In the past, I had taken care of physical issues by using the patch. By using the patch day and night, 24 hours a day. The second thing is throughout everything, lighters, ashtrays, everything that reminds me of smoking. But the thing that makes this time the time that will work is that I'm confronting the emotional reasons for why I need the cigarette. And that's a huge step for me.
For family members, friends, and partners who are trying to support the smoker while they quit, a relapse can be very frustrating.
This is not Mary's first time going to the smokers class, and we attended the smoking class way before, and she started smoking behind my back, And I really felt betrayed by that because I felt that I put a lot of time in with her. And then when she did that, so she went back to the class and I supported her through the whole situation, even though I was really upset. But we went back to the next class.
As someone who is trying to help a smoker quit, you need patience. If you haven't been a smoker, it's often difficult to imagine how hard it is for them to quit.
Our research shows that African American smokers are very motivated to quit smoking and are actually more likely to have made a quit attempt in the past year compared to white smokers, but we're less successful in quitting smoking. And I think if we can draw on the value of persistence and moving forward and working out obstacles and working twice as hard as others for the same outcome, we can be successful.
We have other cultural values that can be an asset in quitting smoking. Take spirituality, for example.
Over 90% of African Americans identify as religious or spiritual. This is a very important cultural value that you can draw upon when you're trying to quit smoking. There are really great scriptures in the Bible and other types of prayers that you can use as a coping strategy when you have a very strong craving or urge to quit.
Prayer can definitely help you to make it prior to quitting and during quitting. Incorporating that can give you a sense of strength. It can lay your foundation down for, in high stress time, I might need to go and say a prayer instead of giving in to the urge to smoke.
Through the entire quitting process, you need to remember that smoking is a learned behavior. It has a physical component that can be largely taken care of by nicotine replacement therapies. But smoking is also a habit and a conditioned response. You need to return to your list of high-risk situations and smoking triggers and review your coping strategies for dealing with them. And if the strategies you've planned aren't working, try something else.
When you have the feeling that you really have to have a cigarette, you have a strong urge, it's important that you are using your coping strategies and that you have tools on board and you already know what mental strategy you'll use, what behavioral strategies you'll use. That is, what will I say to myself to maintain my motivation and maintain my goal? What actions will I take? You know, you really have to kind of get your own arsenal, and different things are going to work for different people. So you have to decide what motivates you.
It seems that everywhere you look in our communities these days, you see cigarette promotions and encouragements to smoke. The temptations are all around us, trying to entice our young people into the habit, keep existing smokers smoking, and trying to lure back those of us who've quit. The question is, what can we do to change this situation? What can we do to take our communities out from under the control of the tobacco companies?
There are multiple strategies that the African American community has to focus on in order to achieve a smoke-free community, in order to keep the rate of smoking as low as possible, in order to keep their children from beginning to smoke. So we need educational programs, we need policy regulations, we need leadership and organizations that promote a non-tobacco agenda, and we need cessation services. We need the Quit Line to be responsive to the African American community. We need our doctors to be aware that they need to provide advice to their patients. We need community organizations and churches to have an agenda. When you have a meeting around the health of your community, if tobacco is not on that agenda, you will have failed.
Some of the other ways that people can get involved to help reduce the impact of tobacco in our communities is to become community advocates, that they begin to educate legislators to pass policies that will help protect the community, everything from clean indoor air to raising taxes, to get involved about the issue of menthol and what it has done to our communities. They can sign up with national organizations, they can create petitions, they can talk to policymakers at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. Get churches involved, get their schools involved, get children involved. So it's an entire community effort in changing the norms of tobacco and reducing the impact that the tobacco industry has on our community.
A lot has been done to provide a base for our own community initiatives.
There are certain organizations that you can turn to, like the National African American Tobacco Prevention Network, that has a website with information and fact sheets where people can download these fact sheets.
There is also a lot of information on tobacco control and smoking cessation on the CDC website, including a companion booklet to this video called Pathways to Freedom: Winning the Fight Against Tobacco.
Pathways to Freedom is a cessation guide that was developed for the African American community. It was the first cessation guide that was developed by African Americans and for African Americans.
Follow this link to the CDC website and enter Pathways to Freedom in the search box. Then click on one of the Pathways to Freedom links. Our churches can take a leadership role in helping people to quit smoking and working toward making our communities tobacco-free.
I really would like to see the churches more involved in our efforts to get people to quit smoking. It's such an important change for people to make. It's so ingrained in the lives of smokers, and I think many smokers are afraid to talk to their pastor and afraid to let the church know that they smoke. And I'm sure that if they did, many times their pastors and bishops would be open to discussing that and really want to help them quit.
But it isn't always easy to make changes. For decades, tobacco companies have been pushing their products into our communities, lying to us about the joys of smoking, making it seem natural, as if using a product that kills more black people than any other product is natural.
Because the tobacco industry has been so successful in its marketing, leaders are confused or they're co-opted. Organizations are dependent on the money that they're getting because they're not getting the money from elsewhere, and they have to survive. The messages that are running through the community are very confusing. People need to be very clear. When you look at 47,300 people dying every year, you don't have very many choices. You have to choose the well-being of the community.
The industry knows that smoking rates are going down among the general population, and that if the industry is going to maintain their sales in tobacco, that they have to go to vulnerable populations, and African Americans are considered a vulnerable population by the industry, and that they can be easily targeted. We need to really get angry and know that our lives are being manipulated by an industry that basically wants to maintain their sales.
Well, there's a lot that remains to be done because the tobacco industry doesn't rest. Every time we have a victory, the tobacco industry, with all of its resources, comes up with a new idea to target our community. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we respond as often as possible with the resources that we have to everything that the tobacco industry is doing to our community.
We all know it takes a village to raise a child. Well, the same can be said about changing the presence of tobacco and tobacco companies in our communities. It's not something someone else is going to do for us. We have to unite and do it ourselves.
I quit, you quit, we both can conquer this. I quit, you quit, so many benefits. I quit, you quit, we both can conquer this. I quit, you quit, freedom is what we get. so many benefits. I quit, you quit, we both can conquer this.